Well, Fort Concho is a post-Civil War military fort. It was one of a number of forts that were built or rebuilt after the Civil War to assist in the security and the defense of the frontier. During the Civil War, the settlement kind of stopped. The Comanches and the Apaches figured out pretty quick that the soldiers were back fighting each other east of the Mississippi for the most part, so they regained much of the land that they had lost during the settlement phase of the 1840s to the 1860s. So when the Civil War ended, the push went west, and it went right through these same territories. The Indians responded as any group would whose land was threatened. The Army was called in, and it set up forts all throughout central and west Texas, and this is one of them. It was established on December 4, 1867, specifically right here for two reasons, well actually three. One, relatively flat land. Two, availability of water, a critical issue. And three, it was already a pass-through area for stages and previous exploration parties. I mean, the Concho Valley is a relatively good pass-through area because of the flatness of the terrain and the water. Army operated this place for 22 years till 1889. It was abandoned on June 20, 1889, because the railroad had already come. A little town had grown up that could defend itself, and frankly the Army wasn't needed here anymore. The Indian problem, as it was called back then, had been settled. The town had about 2,000 people. Army was trying to save money. Congress was tightening those purse strings, and it made more sense to consolidate the forts into larger posts nearer cities and railroad lines, and Fort Concho passed into history. The preservation effort started in the 1920s and continues to this present day. The Buffalo Soldiers had that nickname. It's somewhat of a unique nickname due to the kinkiness and the curliness of their hair. The Indians had not seen black troops before. They had seen generations of white troops, so when they saw the black troops for the first time, it kind of threw them. They saw the hair as something new, and they often equated or explained things to themselves in terms of nature. So the legend, it's partial legend, partial story. The phrase of, hair like that of buffalo eventually over time turned into Buffalo Soldiers, and the name stuck. It wasn't used a lot in the day, but it's sort of become a tagline for the troops. They're all black units established by Act of Congress in 1866. In fact, the 150th anniversary is later this year, which we will be celebrating on July 28. They were infantry and cavalry, and all four units were stationed here. The 10th Cavalry, the most famous of the four units, was headquartered here for 7 years, and overall the post was half Buffalo Soldier or half black during its time. They served with distinction. They were among the Army's best soldiers, and we portray them and talk about them a lot here because they're pretty important. Well, it really started in the old Tom Green County Courthouse back in the late 1920s. Mrs. Ginevra Wood Carson, a community activist and very busy lady, had a number of kids, ran a school, was ahead of her time in terms of education for minorities, and I believe served in the legislature for a term. She decided that the fort was worth saving, but just couldn't get it all together right away in the 1920s, so she started a museum which ended up in one of the unused courtrooms in the old county courthouse, not the one we have today, but the one they tore down in the mid-1920s, or late 1920s. She eventually moved her museum over here to the headquarters building, which is at the eastern edge of the parade ground, and just decided that this was the start to the saving of Fort Concho. People had talked about it for a couple of decades, but she was the one that got it started. And throughout the 30s, 40s, and 50s, they built some exhibits, acquired a few other buildings, but she kind of stalled out a little in the 50s because, well, first you had the Great Depression in the 1930s, and then you had World War II, And then after that, you had the Great Drought, so these were hard times for someone trying to run a museum. But over time, the city got involved. It's owned it since 1935. It's made it an apartment since 1955, and it's had professional staff since the late 1960s. And slowly but surely, budgets were built, professional staff put on, and eventually we've got about 99.5% of the core 43 acres back. And thanks to the staff and volunteers, we have exhibits or period displays in 9 buildings. So we're a lot better than we were, but we owe a lot to those who started this 60, 70, 80 years ago. Most of the buildings people see here are from that time period. 8 of 9 officers' quarters are original. The first 2 barracks are original. The last 2 were rebuilt. The hospital is rebuilt, but the headquarters, quartermaster commissary, and schoolhouse chapel, and the powder house, they're all original. In fact, 3/4 of the place is original. So in terms of getting a decent experience, the folks wandering our buildings and grounds are seeing pretty much the way it would have looked 130 to 140 years ago. We're a busy place. The joke is there are some things for show and some for dough. I mean, we have to earn 2/3 of our operating income, so we're always doing something, either to bring in people and funding or just to make sure that people don't forget about us. In February, we do Buffalo Soldier Heritage Month and a special event at the end of the month. In March, we have the Ladies Living History Month. In April, we do the speaker series on Wednesdays of the month, and we've also done some other living history events, particularly for Spring Break Week. In May, we have Memorial Day and Armed Forces Day. We also have Frontier Day in April. I forgot to mention that's the last Saturday of the month. June and July, we do summer workshops plus our 4th of July cannon salutes. August, we're kind of quiet. It's just too darn hot. September, the speaker series comes back. In October, we have Halloween events. We also get geared up for the Christmas event, and that's normally in December. All throughout the year, we have special tours. We run a Frontier School program for 4th graders in the spring and the fall. And there's just not a day that goes by that something's not happening here. We even, do an exhibit here and there. We host other organizations and their events, such as the Scribbling Art Show in March, the Plein Air Art Group in the fall. Always something going on, and every year brings us new opportunities. We need volunteers. We always need volunteers. So certainly students at Angelo State are more than welcome to contact us at 657-4444 and find out about our opportunities for volunteers. We also have a summary sheet listed on our website at fortconcho.com. Certainly come by and visit. It's just a few dollars for those over 18, and many days it's free. Frontier Day on April 30 is usually free, and there are many other events that are free. The visitor center that we are in now, we rarely charge for. If you want to come in and just look around and not necessarily take the tour, that's free. We welcome any and all participation by folks at ASU. We've had a good internship program over the years. We get 1 or 2 interns a year. We've had the ASU Angelo Serves group here, and we've had the honors program liaison students here as liaisons to our board. So there are a number of options. You don't necessarily have to be a history person to do it. My number 1 most favorite thing, I would say that it is truly involved with so many people and organizations and so many levels. It's good for business, but more importantly, it's good for our soul. It doesn't make any sense to have a facility like this and not play with it. And it doesn't make any sense to have a facility like this and not share it. We're all about partnerships. We work with a wide range of folks on the school district level, the college level, community groups. We host all the historic agencies meetings here. As much as we can stretch this place, we want to be a player. And the satisfaction in seeing that and seeing people come in on a daily basis and enjoy the place, that's my most favorite thing.